it seems to me that these two women, Michelle Ingalls and Paulina Indara, are like living with Joanna in her house, with her 24/7, cooking all of her meals, preparing everything in her life. And I think the results sort of not only speak to just how great an athlete she is, but also speak to the investment and the commitment that she's made to her training to sustain the excellence and get even better than she already is.
Yeah, which is scary because she already was, head and shoulders above the rest of the division, in my opinion. And it shows that she's hungry. It shows that she's there to really build a legacy. She wants to go down as the best strawweight of all time, perhaps the best female UFC fighter of all time. She's already there. Skill-wise, dude, it is impressive. There's very few men that know how to use their feet and gauge the distance like Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And again, for me, the sign of a great striker or someone who's truly comfortable in the cage or in the ring, when you look at it, it's not the person that just throws that big shot, that 1-2 combinations. For me, the highest level of striker are the fighters that can throw 5-6 strike combinations, and she does that, and she'll vary up her strikes. It doesn't matter if it's an elbow, a hook, a cross, a knee. She does it all. It's so impressive. And then on top of that, the other sign of a great striker is a fighter who's a counter striker, someone who can fight going backwards. Joanna can do that. It's so brilliant watching her fight. You see that she's at a different level, and Andrade looked good, but she's not at the level of Joanna Jedrzejczyk. Again, there is so much to learn in watching Joanna. Everything from the sharpness and speed of her jab to how she sets up going to the body. Her clinch work now has really improved. Yeah. She's nasty in there, but with her knees and elbows, she's just brutal. And I knew that if she shut down Andrade in the clinch, Andrade was going to be forced to fight her at range, which is no fighter. I don't care anyone. If you're a guy at 135 pounds, I'm not sure you want to be in there with Joanna at range. She just has so many skills. She has so much speed. So I was extremely impressed with her. Her making the move to American Top Team was absolutely the right choice. She continues to improve. Bad news for everyone at strawweight.
Best striking rate in UFC history, best strike differential in UFC history. She was on 2 big pay-per-views, as I mentioned, one with Ronda Rousey and one with Conor McGregor. And to that end, I wonder the extent to which she moved the pay-per-view needle this weekend, because this was obviously our biggest pay-per-view of the year to date. And I don't know where the early projections are, but I wonder, when is Joanna Jedrzejczyk going to take her career to that type of next level, right? When does she become must-see TV according to fans and consistently show up and do 500,000 pay-per-view buys? Because the fighter itself should absolutely be able to produce that. I think she's as watchable as anyone on the roster. Now, all of that said, Kenny, she's been in there now for more than 2 hours without a finish, and I'm not holding it against her, right? I'm merely just pointing out the fact that now she's had 4 straight title defenses over 100 minutes against Jessica Andrade, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Claudia Gadelha, and Valerie Letourneau, and not gotten any of those women out of there. Now, Joanna has proven to have a great chin in her own right, and I love the fact that when she does get cracked early, as was the case in several previous title defenses, Gadelha, Kowalkiewicz, I forget that one strike, which round that was in, but obviously the hematoma in this fight was early. Like, could she be any less phased when she absorbs a power strike from Andrade and her forehead doubles in size? Like, she's totally unfazed.
Yeah, she gets more focused, man. It's crazy. I think that, for sure, Joanna doesn't have the power to knock a lot of people out. She is 115 pounds. That is going to be hard to find that kind of power. But she is extremely accurate. She is very fast. And what I like about it is she doesn't force it. I think earlier in her career, she tried to force the knockout a little bit. You'd see her get a little bit gassed, a little bit frustrated. She's out there just picking you apart. She's an assassin. If she doesn't take you out with the first bullet, she'll take you out with the last one. Or she's totally content of seeing you bleed to death right there in the octagon. I mean, it's just amazing how she's matured and how she continues to improve.
She is such a sweetheart. Everything about her is infectious, and she just owned fight week, and she couldn't be better. I've never seen a fighter better with the fans, honestly, than Joanna. So very happy to see her come through. And obviously we all laud the toughness of Jessica Andrade, perpetually in forward motion the whole night, just not on that level right yet. And I think it's going to be interesting to see Andrade against this second tier, and I shouldn't even call them second tier, but this next batch of contenders who have had their title shots, the Kowalkiewiczes and Gadelhas of the world. How does Andrade stack up against those fighters? And I think the answer is probably going to be very favorably. So as we spin this division forward, Kenny, obviously there's a big fight at UFC 212 next month. Karolina Kowalkiewicz against Claudia Gadelha, title eliminator of sorts. But the one woman who I think can really match her in the mean department is Thug Rose Namajunas. Now, Namajunas, obviously high-profile win over the karate hottie Michelle Waterson. The only real knock on Namajunas is that she's only one fight removed from a split decision loss to Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So were Kowalkiewicz to beat Gadelha, you can argue that she would deserve a second crack over Rose. I wouldn't make that argument. I think the fight to make is Jedrzejczyk against Namajunas, and I do believe that is the fight that will be made.
I agree. For me, it seems like it's a little rushed in some ways just because Namajunas doesn't have a whole lot of UFC experience or professional fights, but skill-wise, she is absolutely there. I think that she's one of the few skill-wise who can kind of hang with Joanna on the feet. And I also think she's well-rounded enough and dangerous enough on the ground to get a submission. I think that she definitely would have a big advantage if she's able to get Joanna to the mat. When Rose is on, there's a lot in me that says maybe she's the best strawweight in the world. I mean, when she's fighting with confidence, when she has consistency with her training, she is amazing to watch. She's aggressive. She's confident. But when Rose isn't on, she almost seems like she can lose to anyone in that division. But I think Rose is finally coming into her own. She is maturing. She's had the ups and downs of starting out your career really in the UFC. Being thrown into the fire is not easy. I've experienced that myself. But I think Rose does deserve this shot. I think that's the fight that needs to be made.
And Rose was octagon side there in Dallas, Texas. I got
very
to spend
serious.
Time. Oh, how about that look? Kill, right?
It was amazing.
So I got to spend some time with her after the fight, as well as her fiance, Pat Barry. And Pat really just believes she'll have to be perfect. Like she'll have to have her best night, at least right now. And he thinks she's very capable of that. 7 or 8 times out of 10, she really does fight to her potential. And if she does, they think she can get it done. And Pat is going to join us on the podcast here in the next few weeks. So that'll be fun to talk to him about what's happening with Rose. Before we bring on Mark Henry, I want to talk to you about Demian Maia and Jorge Masvidal. Now, when it comes to betting on fights, right, and betting on sports, this is important to note. You're betting the number, right? You're not betting the team. You're not betting the fighter. You're betting the number. So when I looked at this betting line, now I thought Demian Maia would be favored, albeit slightly. So when I saw Demian Maia at plus money or as an even money underdog, the gambler in me thought, man, you got to pull the trigger. Not that I'm contractually prevented, obviously, from betting, but from a betting standpoint, I thought there was value on Demian Maia at plus money, even money or whatever. Split decision win over a very game-bred Jorge Masvidal, who I think showed people just how well-rounded a fighter he is. I had a very high-powered person tell me he thought Masvidal was the best welterweight in the world and actually maintained that opinion after the fight. So Maia Masvidal, Kenny, it went the distance. I'd imagine you thought that Demian did enough to win the fight. How close did you think it was, and overall assessment of both sides in that Maia Masvidal scrap?
It really was a very close fight. I think what taxed Masvidal was him carrying Demian Maia on his back for the first round. And, I said it before. I said the one thing that really got me to pick Demian Maia was the fact that here is a former 185-pounder who is going to be a huge welterweight who relies heavily on his wrestling and grappling game. And when you have a guy like Maia who's hanging on you, you have to exert so much energy to get him off of you. And I thought that although Maia does have a tendency of fading late in the round, I thought that, carrying that extra weight was going to slow Masvidal down, and he wasn't going to be able to take full advantage if he was able to keep it on the feet. Maia did find a way to keep the fight on the mat for the most part, and I thought he was the guy who was really moving forward. I thought when they're on their feet, it was clear. Masvidal is just at a completely different level. Maia is nowhere near the striking of Masvidal, but he makes it work. He strikes enough to get to that clinch, and if he's not close enough on a single or a deep double, he jumps guard, he gets to half guard, and he forces you to defend from there. Will he either sweep you or take your back? And it was a brilliant strategy from Demian Maia. He found a way to get it done. It was one of those fights where, it could have gone either way. You can't be mad with a decision like that. I thought it was close enough. I thought Maia was going to get the win. Some of the guys that I was watching were a little surprised by it. They thought that Masvidal was going to get the win, but it was one of those fights that really could have gone either way. And I think Maia absolutely proved that, he's the guy who deserves the next shot at the welterweight belt.
44th pro fight for Gamebred. Last 4 losses in the UFC, all by split decision. He has never been finished in the UFC. And I left thinking Jorge Masvidal is going to realize the UFC title fight before this is all said and done. I really believe that. And I wouldn't even be opposed if the Woodley-Maia fight is made and Demian, heaven forbid, got injured, giving Masvidal the shot off a loss. I thought his performance in defeat was impressive enough to warrant that.
Yes.
But it does look like, Kenny, the fight is going to be Woodley and Maia. And perhaps some of UFC President Dana White's willingness to give Maia the title shot verbally through the fence to my immediate left was because Tyron's training for July, Kenny, 2 short months away. And it seems like now Dillashaw Garbrandt might be delayed and there would be a need for a second championship fight at UFC 213 for that Big Show International Fight Week. You have Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko. So maybe they do Maia Woodley coming up at UFC 213. Early forecast for that championship fight. Woodley obviously as confident as ever, but this is obviously a different beast than he has ever faced before.
It is, but Woodley obviously with his Division I wrestling pedigree, I think it's one of those guys who really could stop the takedowns of Demian Maia. I also think he has just devastating power with that overhand right. He's so quick. He's going to have a big advantage when it comes to speed against a guy like Demian Maia. What he can't do is allow Maia to grab his leg in the open cage because Maia now is adjusting. He is going to his back and finding a way to sweep you or take your back. I think where Woodley needs to be, defending the takedowns is more up against the cage. I think he can defend better from there. And I think it's also going to give him a lot of confidence to strike with someone like Demian Maia on the feet. And we've seen Woodley's power. Woodley has the kind of power and speed to stop anyone in that division. Doesn't matter who you are. He's just always going to be a threat there. But it's a fascinating fight because Maia does have a huge advantage against Woodley if the fight hits the mat. Woodley obviously has good wrestling control and all those things, but he's never faced anyone like a Demian Maia on the mat. I don't think Woodley wants to be there. He wants to keep it on the feet where he will have the huge advantage.
And I know you're happy for all of these guys when they get where they're trying to get, but in particular, Demian Maia, I know he has sought you out several times when we've been calling fights. I know you guys are pretty close and just really an affable, nice guy that I think we're both very happy for, given the fact that he's now 10-2 in this division. He's won 7 in a row. All of that said, dude, I think I'm getting a Gamebred tattoo. I mean,
I love it.
Maybe dude, I'll wait till my UFC tenure calling fights is over, but I don't know if it's going to be on the neck just like his, but if I can't have a son named Gamebred, I want Gamebred somewhere on my body. I just do.
He's a beast, man. I was so impressed with Masvidal as always. I mean, how many guys can have Maia on their back and not get submitted? How many guys can be in those precarious situations and not get tapped by someone like Maia? I was extremely impressed. Masvidal is a guy who will get back to the top. And I also think, as far as contenders, he's still on that list. Also, how sick would a fight against him and Wonderboy be? I would